Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Ganganasadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Hello, welcome. Pay very close attention to these teachings. They are from a work of Adi Shankaracharya, Viveka Chudamani, and it is Advaita Vedanta. So these are the teachings that you find in the scriptures. They are according to the scriptures. So pay very attention to these teachings. Listen very carefully to these teachings. Then you should reflect upon them, reflecting a lot upon these teachings, and then meditate upon these teachings so that they may bear fruit in your heart. Hello, welcome once again. In this series of videos, I'm going to talk about Viveka Chudamani, a work of Adi Shankaracharya, presenting his teachings in simple words, a beautiful work made in simple words that most can understand. So I'm going to read and then comment about the slokas, the verses. So it is the crest jewel of discrimination. So first, of course, always a prayer, an invocation of the divine, of God. I prostrate myself before Govinda, the perfect teacher who is absorbed always in the highest state of bliss. His true nature cannot be known by the senses or the mind. It is revealed only through the knowledge of the scriptures. This knowledge of the scriptures is that which reveals Govinda, the perfect teacher, Brahman. It is through that knowledge that it is revealed. And that is something that goes beyond the senses and the mind. Greatness of abiding in Brahman. It is hard for any living creature to achieve birth in a human form. So this, more or less, is taken for granted. You find yourself in a human body, immersed in activities and things to do, and you need to be happy, and you don't have time, and you have to accelerate. And you don't stop to question anything. What is the importance of that birth? What is the purpose of that? Just going with the flow. But understand that it is difficult to have a human birth. Let's say that the line is long. So it is a very good opportunity and it should not be wasted, but usually it is. Strength of the body and will are even harder to obtain. Together with this human birth, to have strength is even more difficult, and to have a strong will is even more difficult than achieving a human birth. But it is very important for the quest for liberation because you will need it. Without it, you will succumb to the sense impressions, sense pleasures. You will continue to be a slave of them. Purity is even harder still. So, aside from this human birth, the willpower, purity is that which reveals a heart which is becoming ready for this final dissolution. And you can see this in your day-to-day, in your interactions. In which way do you look at others? Are there judgments there? Do you always see the best? Purity. Is your heart desiring God? Even harder than these is the desire to live a spiritual life. So far, all these qualities can still relate to a worldly life. So, apart from this, having the desire to live a spiritual life, that is even more difficult. But there's a reflection here. What is a spiritual life? It is a life which is completely dedicated to contemplating the highest and cutting all ties with worldliness. It is not a life in which you use spiritual teachings to improve worldly life. So let's make that distinction clearly. Because if we didn't, then many people would fit in this category, and they don't really. And if they don't, it means whatever you don't find in yourself, which is a need to be there, you need to develop that. And then understanding of the scriptures is the hardest of all. Well, of course, because as long as there are worldly motivations, you will be blind for the understanding of the scriptures, because whatever you will read, it will be interpreted according. Sometimes it is difficult to do so, but many times you can do it, because teachings, they come in how do you say this? They are not clear. They come with a code, and the code to decode the teaching is the desire for liberation and the absence of this strong worldly desires. There must be a degree of detachment towards this in understanding and in action, so that you can really understand, decode the teachings which are presented to you in the scriptures. As for discrimination between the Atman and the non-Atman, for direct perception of the Atman itself, for continuous union with Brahman and final liberation, these cannot be obtained except through the merits of 100 billion well-lived lives. So all these merits, they are needed so that these circumstances are there. But this part of the sentence, I understand where it points out, but understand one thing. If the desire for liberation is strong, anything is possible, and you don't know what you have done previously, how many lives you have lived, and for the real seeker of truth, the one who is thirsty for liberation, this doesn't matter. What matters is you focusing intensely in that direction. And believe me, if you do this, whatever is missing will be developed. It doesn't matter in what stage you are. So look at these directions and see that if you're not finding certain characteristics, develop them. It's not an obstacle, it's an invitation for developing it. It just becomes an obstacle if you choose to ignore it and continue moving forward without developing this, without focusing your attention in developing what is missing. But they come together, moving forward and developing what's missing. So this sentence is true, but it can be misleading in the sense that, oh, so I have to wait more time, have to live more lives and all of that. It's not really the case. And the desire for liberation may be subtle, but as you exert in the right direction, cutting with these worldly ties, it may increase exponentially to the level which is intended. Because it depends on the layers that are blocking your sight. And depending on your intensity, you may get rid of them very fast. Okay. Only through God's grace may we obtain those three rarest advantages: human birth, the longing for liberation, and discipleship to an enlightened teacher. So human birth, we have covered and understand here the context. Only through God's grace. So it is not just by chance and just by being in the line, waiting and receiving, but also through God's grace. So it means that that birth is a blessing, because a divine blessing, because it has the purpose of liberation, nothing else. But if you miss that, it's just another more episode, like some other animal or something like that. So human birth is God's grace. The longing for liberation, here, the longing for liberation, that is, in my vision, the core of it. It is the engine of the quest for liberation. And this is where you should put your fire, because, of course, there are some complications sometimes, because the desire for liberation may be strong through greed, and it may push you in the right direction, but then parts of the personality will not be able to endure this. But still, if the longing for liberation is strong, it can make you develop whatever is needed and do whatever is necessary. So that longing for liberation is the engine of it all. And the discipleship to enlightened teacher. Well, that is also God's blessing, and it is a must, because even with all those characteristics, you are still blind, and you need the right teachings to meditate upon. And for that, only the knower of Brahman can give. And the knower is not someone who read in the scriptures, who has read the characteristics of non-Brahman, of Brahman itself, who has contemplated a lot. That is good, but a knower of Brahman is the one who has enlightened, who has merged with Brahman, who has dissolved all this body-mind complex. And that is very difficult to find. Nevertheless, there are those who somehow manage to obtain this rare human birth, together with bodily and mental strength and an understanding of the scriptures. Well, until the bodily and mental strength, we see this in worldly surroundings, worldly people with worldly investments, goals, and we see strong people, determined people, human people, because it's talking about human birth. So we see all this, and they excel others in their undertakings, but that doesn't make it spiritual. But then, with this, an understanding of the scriptures, and yet are so deluded that they do not struggle for liberation. Because this understanding for the scriptures is still conditioned by these worldly motivations, worldly values that assist their lives. They may be in spiritual circumstances, but like I've explained previously, that doesn't mean a spiritual life. A spiritual life is that life which is dedicated to self-realization, in this language, to the direct knowledge and merging with Brahman, and cutting, renouncing all aspects of the body-mind complex life, all attachments, every worldly investment, renouncing it all. This is a spiritual life. And if you're not doing this, you may have an understanding of the scriptures, but you will not make that, you will not go in the direction of liberation. You're using that to improve the circumstances of the body-mind, for wellness, for well-being, etc., for the balance of the personality, for improving relationships, for all of that. That has nothing to do with Brahman, with the self. It is all about the non-self. Such men are suicides because they clutch at the unreal and destroy themselves. This is why they are suicides. A suicidal is the one who wastes his life here and ends the life of the body. In the same way, wasting your opportunity for liberation and using your time and all those capabilities, all those blessings to invest in the unreal, and losing your opportunity of immortality, of self-realization, of the eternal infinite Brahman that you are, that is suicide, equals suicide. For what greater fool can there be than the man who has obtained this rare human birth, together with bodily and mental strength, and yet fails through delusion to realize his highest good? Well, he is always in the quest of his highest good. Everyone is. Question is, can you see it? Can you grasp what's your highest good? You can only see as far as your real values. And if your values are worldly by nature, then it is through this that you will see your highest value. So security, acceptance, love, understanding, all these things, this will be your highest value. And you may say, no, but I want self-realization. But even your self-realization will have this meaning that I mentioned previously. It will be for you in some way the improvement of these unreal circumstances. So to realize your highest good, you have to contemplate on this which was said. The purpose of self-realization, merging with Brahman, with the infinite bliss, and not investing in the non-self. That this life is a gift from God, a blessing from God, and you need to put your train in the right track. So realizing your highest good, some work has to be made for this to be possible in a lifetime. This is considering your life, your birth, and how it is, but in a lifetime. All these intense spiritual practices may help you come from a place that you see you have no idea of your highest good. Even by listening to this, even by contemplating on this, it is twisted, adapted to your reality. This is why intense meditation helps purifying the mind, helps cutting, renunciating these worldly investments towards sense pleasures, and this will help you eventually to grasp your highest good and establishing yourself in that direction. Men may recite the scriptures and sacrifice to the holy spirits. They may perform rituals and worship deities. But until a man wakes to the knowledge of his identity with Brahman, liberation can never be obtained, because duality will always be present, more or less. No, not even at the end of many hundreds of Brahma's years. So Brahma has very long years. You don't even want to think about that. But what this means is, if you're always contemplating these actions, in a sense, you are maintaining duality, but it has a purpose. The purpose is to develop devotion, to purify the mind, to make you suitable for. But until he wakes up to the knowledge of his identity with Brahman, which is the main teaching of liberation. Not that the other teachings will not get him here. They may take you to the direct perception of this, but this is about the teaching yet. So, of course, not the recitation of scriptures per se, but the tuning with the spiritual life, with the spiritual consciousness of the scripture, that has one. The rituals and worshipping deities, not by the ritual itself, but the ritual is about you tuning with that divine consciousness. And that tuning, if intense, may lead you to merging with it. So all these things, by themselves, as a mechanical thing, they will not help you. But if they are not, they will take you either to this knowledge of your identity with Atman, or to direct perception of it. But I will not go too much in this, because this teaching is in one line. Let's follow it. So the scriptures declare that immortality cannot be gained through work or progeny or riches. Very interesting. Work, whatever work it is, worldly work, and even spiritual work, but it works in different ways. But by renunciation alone, by renouncing all of this. What is all of this? Not only these three that were shown. So, but by renouncing the fruits of all of this, of all these actions, because they are binding you to a worldly consciousness, to a worldly vision, to a worldly aspiration. So it is through renunciation alone of all of this. Hence it is clear that work cannot bring us liberation. Well, worldly work, a work which is not directed to divine circumstances, which is not seva, which is uninterested work, which is selfless work, all other works, they will not lead you to liberation. They will keep you in bondage. So it is through the renunciation of it all. So all these works are performed by the body-mind complex. And they are feeding this body-mind complex. So its work, its surroundings, everything, it is by renunciation alone. Hence it is clear that work cannot bring us liberation. Good work, the work that helps to purify the heart, it is good as a means, but it's not an end in itself. Therefore, let the wise man give up craving for pleasure in external things. What is external? In this sense, everything which is connected to this body-mind complex and its more grossest aspects. So all sense pleasures, objects, all that you experience through the body-mind, this should be given up. So to give up the craving for pleasure, what is this? It is the impulse that drives you in the direction of investing in sense pleasures and enjoying them. So this drive, this impulse, you should give it up. It's difficult, takes time, but it not take time. It takes time with hard work. So let the wise man give up craving for pleasure in external things and struggle hard for liberation. Again, and struggle hard for liberation. There's this vision these days that, oh no, it has to flow, it's very easy, but it isn't, as you will see. And this is old teachings, untouched by the modern expectancies of the market, supply and demand, aligned with self-interests and money and etc., etc. This is old school. And struggle hard for liberation. And you will see, to move, you will have to struggle hard for liberation. If you don't see that, it means you're not seeing the level of the challenge because you're not in it. You're doing something else. Let him seek out a noble and high-souled teacher and become absorbed wholeheartedly in the truth which is taught by him. This high-souled teacher is a liberated teacher. It's a guru, it's a master. And being absorbed wholeheartedly, what does this mean? First, devotion has to be there. Doubts have to be dispelled. And as you find this high soul, understand it was God's blessing. So dive completely in it, be absorbed in it, in His teachings. Don't be in the middle. Don't judge the teaching. Judge whatever you need prior to that. And when your heart gives you the confirmation, then put all doubt, cast all doubts aside and dive completely. Be completely absorbed in His teachings, because these are the right teachings and they will be put in a way that you can grasp them. Sometimes with a challenge in it, but in a way that it is possible for you. Even if you think that it is impossible, that trust and that diving in will reveal it. Through devotion to right discrimination, he will climb to the height of union with Brahman. By the power of Atman, let his rescue his own soul, which lies drowned in the vast waters of worldliness. Through devotion to right discrimination. Here it comes again. So only devotion, only real devotion can take you to the right discrimination. There's always devotion. Those who invest their times in worldly things, they are devoted to them. And this brings wrong discrimination. That this is important, this is real, etc. But real devotion brings real discrimination. Without it, there's dry discrimination or wrong discrimination, usually both. So through that discrimination, by letting go that which is non-Atman, he will climb to the heights of the Atman. And by the power of Atman, let him rescue his own soul, which is not different from Atman or Brahman, but we will get there. These are different terms used in different ways because sometimes they have different meanings in the way they are being exposed, not the meaning itself. Which lies drowned in the vast waters of worldliness, rescuing his own soul from the vast waters of worldliness. Let the wise who have grown tranquil and who practice contemplation of the Atman give up all worldly activities and struggle to cut bonds of worldliness. This is very important. Let the wise, the one who has developed certain qualities already, who is more or less ready for this path, let him who has grown tranquil. This means, who is the tranquil one? The one who is not going after, who doesn't have this this craving for pleasures, for sense pleasures, attachments, and all of this. As long as he has this, there's no tranquility. So the man who has grown tranquil and who has practiced contemplation of the Atman, he is already practicing contemplation of the Atman, and this will have different meanings, as we will see. Give up all worldly activities. So all activities that are worldly, meaning that are in direction of improving circumstances of life, that are about experiencing sense pleasures, that feed the mistake that you are the body-mind complex, cut them all. And struggle to cut the bonds of worldliness. Whatever bonds are there, they need to be cut. This is why sannyasins, monks, swamis, they die to the world. Even there's a funeral rite which is performed, and they die for all relatives, for all the world, for all connections to the previous character. And these are brand new souls taking birth for the second time and dedicating that life to liberation only. It is a way of cutting ties. But it's an inner attitude. It's just an example. And after doing this, bonds will be there because you're bonded by the world. The world is bonded to you. And as you move forward, you will see these strings pulling you, and these you need to cut.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.